Welcome to MarketPulse Pros and Pioneers. Each week, I talk with industry leaders on both marketing and entrepreneurship and business to find out all about their wins and failures in marketing right now. We'll hear all about successes and wins and what's fallen flat so that you can take that knowledge and implement it. Learn from the best, from the folks who've been there and done it all, as well as people just like you. Thanks for joining us. This is MarketPulse Pros and Pioneers.
We've all heard that sales is about closing deals, but what if that's completely wrong? In this episode, I sat down with Bob Burg, co-author of The Go-Giver, a book that has sold over 1 million copies globally. Not only that, but Bob is a Hall of Fame keynote speaker and is known the world over for his philosophy on networking. I'm joined by Bob as he explores how the most successful people in business don't just sell, they serve, build trust and focus on creating value first. If you want to win in business without being pushy, you need to hear this. Hello and welcome back to MarketPulse Pros and Pioneers, where this week we have a very limited special edition episode. This week it is my honour, to be honest, Bob, to invite you along to the episode. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Burg. Thank you for coming along today, Bob.
Thank you, Paul. The honor is mine. Thank you for having me.
The interesting story is I was chatting on a post in LinkedIn and somebody who, ironically, the person who tagged you, Bob, that isn't even in my initial network either. And they kindly tagged you into the post and you replied to something that I'd said. And your name immediately sprang to mind because I've had your name drummed into me by various people who I respect in the networking world. And whilst I hadn't read your book, I knew of your book. And I know that we're very much aligned in how we go about things. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very pleased that you accepted the cheeky invitation via email to come along to the podcast. I really do appreciate your time today.
Absolute pleasure.
So ladies and gentlemen in the audience, if you don't know Bob, I'd suggest that you familiarize yourself, to be honest, because I align very heavily. And I know a lot of you follow me because you also align with my vision on networking and relationships. And I'm happy to say that a lot of that happens to be similar to, very much based on the teachings that Bob's given for the last 30 years or so. Bob is a Hall of Fame keynote speaker, a best-selling author, and also one of the world's leading voices on relationship marketing and influence. And his book, The Go-Giver, which is co-authored by John David Mann as well, has sold over 1 million copies and sparked a global movement around the idea that shifting your focus from getting to giving and providing immense value to others is the most effective way to achieve business success. So as I said, for the last 40 years, Bob has coached entrepreneurs, leaders, and sales professionals on how to build high trust relationships, generate endless referrals, and grow their business by becoming go-givers. Bob also runs the Go-Giver Academy, which offers his training programs as well as his daily impact emails. And Bob continues to teach that influence, generosity, and value creation are the real drivers of success. Bob, I have to say, in an AI-driven world where everybody's looking for an easy and cheap silver bullet to make themselves rich quick, that bio is just so refreshing to hear because it's real. It's real, and I live it. I know how much impact that has. So, yeah. How did you start out with the whole Go-Giver journey, Bob? Like, what were your early days that led to that kind of moment where you thought that this is something that needs to be out there in the world?
Yeah, it's a great question, Paul, because I was very fortunate to be raised by two wonderful parents. And so I think they instilled that basic mindset in me. And that's very much an advantage. And I know my co-author, John David Mann, he said his parents were very much the same. Really, when I got into the business world, beginning in sales, I saw people do things in certain ways that sometimes you see people do things according to the values that you hold and they do really well. And other times they do those things and they don't do as well. And other people do things contrary to what you believe, they do really well. And other times people doing things contrary to what you believe and they don't do well. Okay. However, in time, you begin to see patterns develop, right? And patterns are those things that are fairly predictable. Doesn't mean it's 100% of the time, but it's predictably true. And what I saw was this, that the most successful, the highest money earning, successfully high earning, money earning people, and those who also had success in their personal life, had good friendships and healthy relationships, and felt good about themselves. It just seemed like these were the people who were really just focused on making other people's lives better, not in a self-sacrificial way, not in a way that hurt them, no, but in a way that always found a way to add value to life and add value to the lives of others. To me, since that was congruent with the values I was brought up with, it made sense for me to follow that. A couple of years after I'd been in sales, and I had done fairly well after a slow start because I had no formal sales training. But once I started reading the right books and going to the right seminars and listening to the right, back then it was audio tapes. That's how long ago this was. But my sales went really well. But then I moved to another company and I was selling a high ticket item, and I started in a sales slump and was not getting out of it. And I made a very young salesperson's mistake. And that is I panicked. And I started really focusing on myself and my sales as opposed to focusing on pleasing the customer and helping them with what they needed. And one day, an older gentleman, he was about to retire. He wasn't even in the sales department. I think he was an engineer or something. He was one of these very quiet type of people who didn't say much, but whenever he did, it was always profound. He said to me, and I think he saw the potential in me, and he said, "Burg, can I share something with you, or can I give you some advice?" He said. I said, "Sure, I could use it." And he said, "If you want to make a lot of money in sales," he said, "don't have making money as your target is serving people. Now, when you hit the target," he continued, "you'll get a reward, and that reward will come in the form of money, and you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget," he said, "the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It's not the target itself. Your target is serving others." And Paul, what that said to me was that great salesmanship is never about the salesperson. Great salesmanship is never about the product or service. As important as that is, it's just never what it's about. Great salesmanship is really about the value you're adding to another person's life. Or we could even say it's about another person's life being better just because you are part of it. And I think when we start from that premise, we're really 9 steps ahead of the game in our 10-step game.
Question for you on that note then. Do you think it's possible for somebody who has previously come at their sales game from a perspective of looking to make revenue, and it's all about the money and transactional, and how can I make this sale bigger by just doing what I need to do, what's necessary? Is it possible for somebody to flip that mindset to become a go-giver, to lead with value first?
It's possible, and I've seen a lot of people do it, but here's what's important, and here's why I love your question. Because it has to do with whether this person is willing to look at a different way of doing something. Because if this person doesn't see that, let's put it this way, we can never overcome a problem we don't realize we have. So if this person, based on their mindset or their upbringing or what they've been taught, which they have accepted as fact, accepted as truth, this is how you do it. There's only one thing. They may just say, "No, I'm not interested in something like that." But you've got the person who says, "Yeah, okay, I've made a good living. I've made a good career. I'm always having to repeat my efforts. I don't have loyal advocates. I don't feel necessarily good about myself all the time because I have to say and do things in a way that really isn't. So is there a better way to do this?" And okay, now they're in a position where they can be open to some new information and a different way of doing things. And one of the nicest things John and I can hear is that someone did exactly that. Now, I will say this, Paul, most people who write us will say what they liked most about the book is, "You just told me what I want to be doing. This is how I want to be doing, how I've always done it. It's just, you've given me almost permission to do things in a way," because human nature really says we want to make a difference in people's lives. And as salespeople and entrepreneurs, we tend to do that mainly through our product or service. Now, that doesn't mean we can't do other things and be involved in other, but most of our time is working, right? In a sense. So that's how we really bring value to the world. And I think most people, most entrepreneurs, salespeople, they want to feel good about what they're doing. So I think a lot of people related to the book because of that. But we love when we hear from someone who says, oh, I was always taught blah, 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 blah. Since using the Go Giver way, we boom. And that's just always such a wonderful thing to hear.
Special shout out in today's episode for our charity partners, ADHD Liberty, led by Sarah Templeton, who are part of the fight to prevent the school to prison pipeline for ADHD and neurodiverse individuals. If you'd like to find out more, you can visit them. The show links are in the notes below, and I would encourage you to go along and have a look and educate yourself on their fight. It's an incredibly important cause, and we're super proud to have them as charity partners for the MarketPulse Pros and Pioneers podcast. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your episode. It's fascinating. If I bring it back a little bit then, so you'd obviously started in that sales role, you were starting to figure things out in terms of adding that value and putting that into practice and believing in that kind of service-led relationship building. What was the point where you realized that you had something that other people needed to hear?
Oh, gosh. I think one of the biggest things, and this came out of necessity, was that in the prospecting process, it can be so difficult to get people's interest in you. And I always say when I first started in sales, I was on the phone a lot, right? And so one of the first things I learned that I came to realize that I just discovered, right, is that nobody hung up the phone on me while they were talking. If I'm talking about myself and my products and how great they are and we're number one and we've been around since 19 years, they don't care. They're right. They want to get off the phone. But if they're talking about themselves, they are engaged. You know what? Not only was that true in person on the phone, it was true in person. Of course, today we could say on Zoom. Back then, 40 years ago, that wasn't the case. But it was true in person. And so what I came up with was a way of having certain questions that you could ask people to engage them to begin a healthy relationship. One of the things I said this in my first book, Endless Referrals, back in 94, I think it came out, but I was saying this before that, is that what I call the golden rule of sales, the golden rule of business. And that is, all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know and trust. The fastest, most powerful, most effective way to elicit those feelings toward you is by moving from an I focus or me focus to that other focus, looking to, as Sam, one of the mentors in the Go Giver, advised Joe, the protege, to make your win all about the other person's win. And we can do that in an initial conversation with someone that we just met somewhere in our community at some function or an event or whatever it happens to be. When we ask that person how they got started in their business, because who asked them how they got started there? Most people are just talking about themselves. They give their elevator speech and blah, blah, blah. But what if we said to somebody, when we have introduced ourselves and we know they sell copying machines and we sell whatever we sell, and we say to this, how did you get started? How did you get your start as an office products professional? Now, it's not a clever question, not a slick question. It's very mundane. How did you get started in whatever people love answering that question, right? Because you're asking them to tell you their story. Nobody asked them to tell them. Their own family has never asked them to tell them how they got their start. And here's you, who different from everyone else they've met. Another question, a nice follow-up question to that is asking them what they enjoy most about what they do, right? So it might be, wow, you must have had some fascinating experiences. What do you enjoy most about your work? This is a question that flies in the face of so much traditional sales teaching, where we're taught to immediately find their pain, reach into their heart and tear it out so you can go. But the relationship hasn't even started yet. They're not necessarily ready for this. And when you ask these questions, and then I like to ask what I call the one key question that will distinguish you from the rest after asking these first couple of questions, and that is, how can I know if someone I'm speaking with is a good potential client for you? So again, you're focusing on them from the very beginning, and you're creating that environment for this person to really feel good about you, to want to get to know you better, to want to be part of your life. And these are how relation. And when I started doing that and started teaching that to people, and people were saying, "Oh my gosh, this takes all the pressure off me having to do it." And people were coming back and saying, that's when it said, okay, I think there's something here that people are open to, that people want to learn about.
Amazing.
But again, my greatest models for that were my folks, just watching them do that.
And that, it's fascinating hearing you say that, because again, that's something I can align with myself as well. So part of me wonders whether there is a lot of stock in there. Certainly a good base point to jump off from. I wonder then, so obviously at this point you're a salesperson, you're starting to see people around you are starting to take an interest in what you've got to say. What was the point where you decided that you were happy to give a keynote speech? Did that get thrust on you? Did you ask for it?
No.
How did that happen?
So what happened was I was always attending seminars when I could to learn more. And so now at this point, I'm a sales manager of a company. Zig Ziglar was coming into town, and another guy was coming into town, opening for Zig. And so I took my sales staff my sales team to this event. So at the end, I buy Zig's tapes, of course, because I always buy whatever Zig would sell. And then this other guy was selling a tape. Again, these are tapes. I don't even know if your audience members remember the
I think they do.
When I got that person's tapes, they were really good information. And at the back, he had an advertisement that said, if you want to make some extra money learning how to speak and sell these tapes, call our office. So I did, and I went down there, and they showed me what I'd need to do, and I could buy wholesale the tapes. And then they taught me, that the guy himself taught me how to give 30-minute presentations at all sorts of civic clubs, organizations, groups, anyone that would have me for 25 to 30 minutes, how to do the little sales commercial at the end, holding up the tapes. And from what I understand, I was their leading salesperson and doing that across the country part-time. But again, because I did what they told me to do. But I put the fire in me that I like doing that. And so then I began my own speaking practice, my own speaking business. A key for me was that I joined the National Speakers Association, which is a big association of professional speakers. And so I learned it, which is focused mainly on the business of speaking, because it's like anything else. It's a business like anything else. And I learned sort of the system for selling and marketing myself as a speaker. And I did that in a few years. It took a few years to build a successful practice, but eventually I did.
So coming to the end of that side of things then, and obviously you've been keynote speaking for such a long time. You must have a favorite story of somebody who's been impacted by the message that you've delivered. What's the biggest impact you've delivered to somebody else's life? Because that's, again, aligned to so much with what I do, because my why is helping people make better decisions so they can live a better life. Where does that sit for you?
And I think my why is really to be an encourager, to help people feel genuinely good about themselves. And so when I speak, really my goal is to provide the how-to information in such a way that they have the confidence to be able to go out and immediately apply it. So I would say that the feedback I receive from the talks is along those lines, that they were able to take the information and boom, put it in. Sometimes I hear these sales figures from people and I think, oh my gosh, they're doing a lot better than I could have done with it. I love it. Right? I mean, that's the nicest compliment you could receive.
Absolutely. But that begs an interesting question, right? A lot of businesses are driven by the investors in the business, especially in the tech world and the SaaS businesses. And the pressure I see a lot of salespeople being put under is driven by those metrics that the investors want to be able to measure. They want to be able to know, right, you've reached out to, 10,000 leads this month via email, via phone calls, via WhatsApp, via LinkedIn. What would be your advice to a salesperson who wants to adopt the Go-Giver methodology and philosophy, but they're feeling the pressure from above to automate things and go in the transactional route, if that makes sense?
Yeah, my message is more to the leadership to understand something, that nobody's going to buy from their salespeople because they want them to be able to give metrics. And if you force your salespeople to do that, what you're doing is you're really cutting off your nose to spite your face. You're hurting yourself. Now, remember, doing this selling as a go-giver doesn't mean it takes longer than doing it by just trying to make the quick sale. No, it actually is faster. The reason why is, again, if you're the type of person you're just focused so much on making the sale and getting their money, people know that. Not everybody, but most do. And they're actually more resistant to you when they know that you genuinely have their well-being at heart, which comes from knowing how to ask the right questions in the sales conversation, how to discover their needs, their wants, their desires, right? How to add the insights that are going to help mitigate weaknesses and help them to leverage strengths and all these things. Your sales are going to come faster. But when you put pressure on a salesperson to have to account for every contact, that has to result in something, in other words, being an attachment to the results. No, it's hurtful. It's hurting their production and it's hurting the company's bottom line.
So then part of the message that you've got out there is around genuine influence. Would love you to share the idea behind genuine influence to people, especially with regards to how business owners and marketers can help build influence in an authentic way. I think that's been lost these days. Quite honestly, I just see so many people putting stuff out there that they haven't even written themselves, and then it's hard. So what would you say about genuine influence with regards to, especially with regards to that kind of automation angle that's coming now?
If you look at influence itself on a very basic level, it can be defined as the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the context of a specific goal. That's the definition, but that's not really the essence of what we would call genuine influence. A genuine influence is really not about pushing your ideas, pushing your will, push it right on others. You never hear people say, wow, that Tom or that Mary, she has so much influence. She has a lot of push with people. No, she's influential. She has a lot of pull with people. And that's what genuine influence really is. It's pull. It's an attraction. Influencers, genuine influencers attract people first to themselves through who they are, right? And then to their idea. Now, again, this pull manifests itself through the questions you ask, how well you listen and when you ask questions, or your focus needs, I always say, be internally motivated, but outwardly focused, right? So anything that you do, if you want to be a genuine influencer, and the most effective influencer you can be, is to always question yourself, such as, how does what I'm asking this person to do, how does it align with their goals, with their needs, their wants, their desires, with their values? How does what I'm asking this person to do, how does what I want this person to do, how does it solve a problem for them? Not for me, for them, okay? How does it move them closer to happiness? And when we ask ourselves these questions thoughtfully and intentionally, intelligently, genuinely, authentically, not as a way to manipulate another human being into doing our will, but as a way of building everyone in the process, now we've come a lot closer to earning that person's commitment, which is pull, as opposed to depending on some type of compliance, which is push.
I guess it's almost that idea of having social capital in the bank with people and being able to command that when you need to. But I align quite closely with the idea that it's not about the money. It's about delivering some value to somebody else's life and work commitments that makes their life better because you've been in it. And just knowing that there will be financial gains will come, but like that, never the reason. It's a symptom of having done what you've done.
Yeah. One thing John David Mann, my awesome co-author, phrase he coined, and I think this goes right with what you just said, is that money is simply an echo of value. It's the thunder, if you will, to values lightning, which means the value must be your focus. Remember, nobody's buying for your reasons. Nobody's buying for my reasons. Nobody's buying for any of the reasons of anybody watching us. They're buying for their own reasons, right? That's also human nature. And that's reality. And we need to respect reality. And so when we focus on providing immense value, and remember, even value is relative, right? It's the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something to the end user or beholder. What is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that they find such high worth, immense worth or value in, that they willingly exchange their money for it? And they're glad they did, while you make a healthy profit. In fact, in any market-based exchange, there should always be two profits, the buyer profits and the seller profits, because each of them come away better off afterwards than they were beforehand. But it always begins with the salesperson or entrepreneur saying on how they can make that other person's life better through the value they're providing. The money is simply a natural result of the value that they've provided.
And again, it can't just be, I need to add value to this person so that I get some return out of this. It has to be, I'm going to add value to this person. Full stop.
Yeah.
End of conversation.
Oh, exactly.
But it always does. It always comes back. It always, whether it's directly in sales, whether it's in other opportunities, whether it's referrals or connections or network or just trust, like it's there and it's absolutely palpable. It baffles me that I didn't come across your work long before I did. And exactly as you described at the beginning, when I heard more about your philosophy and the methodology behind the Go-Giver, it did feel like somebody had given me permission to carry on doing what I was doing. I was like, that is really, wow. Somebody else thought that too. Oh, it wasn't the first. Devastating. But genuinely, I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, Bob, and I could probably do 3 or 4 hours of conversation with you. And it's been fascinating to dig behind the scenes a bit. Thank you very much for coming along today and being a fabulous guest.
My absolute pleasure. Honor to be with you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching along and you're entertained by what Bob's had to say today, I will make sure that all of the show notes cover all of Bob's books and where you can find out more information about the Go-Giver. Would love you to dig into that a bit more, because more than anything, more than any of the guests that we've had on the show, I just think that by following that philosophy, then the world would just be such a nicer place to be in. When you next open your LinkedIn inbox and you see all the spam mail that's in there, just ask yourself, like, if everybody in this inbox followed the Go-Giver methodology and believed the same things, we would never have another spam message to deal with. Wouldn't that be a nice place to be? Thank you very much for being a fabulous guest, Bob. And thank you, everyone who's watching along from home. Really appreciate you being a fantastic audience for us. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to feature on a future show, or you've got some ideas for folks who would make a great guest, please drop us a line. Contact details are in the show notes, and I'd love to hear from you. Your host today was me, Paul Banks, founder at Javelin Content Management. Here at Javelin, we specialise in helping busy business owners just like you to repurpose video content, taking all the stress and tech problems away and turning your long-form video into literally hundreds of pieces of content without breaking the bank. We describe it as getting ideas out of your head into video and out to your socials. If you want to launch your personal brand, become the vendor of choice for your audience, or maximise your sales revenue impact, we'd love to hear from you. Join us next Wednesday for the next episode, and don't forget to subscribe and give us a review. Our podcast is only possible with your continued support.